All right, good afternoon and welcome to today's Assembly Committee on Labor and Employment for this Wednesday, March 18th. Welcome to all the new members of the committee that are here today. Assemblymember Lowe, Kevin McCarty, Assemblymember McCarty, Mr. Patterson, Mr. Chu, and also Assemblymember Harper. Thank you and welcome. Appreciate you being a part of the committee. We're going to be doing some really good work this year. This is the first committee hearing of the year. And so I'm excited to get this started here. I know the committee members those presenting before us today are excited about their good work. And so let's get going. The first order of business here is to establish a quorum. So with that, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Hernandez.
Present.
Harper.
Present.
Chu. Lowe.
Here.
McCarty.
Here.
Patterson. Here. Thurman. Quorum established, sir.
All right. Quorum is established. At this time, the first order of business of the agenda here is to adopt the rules of the committee. Does any member have any objection to the rules? All right, hearing and seeing no objection, the committee rules are adopted. And so at this time, we're going to start with Assembly Bill. Oh, as a reminder to the bills today, to the rules today, we're going to allow 3 speakers, 2 minutes each to the presenting authors. So 3 speakers, 2 minutes each on both sides for those opposed and those in support. So at this time, we're going to start with Assembly Bill 251. Assemblymember Levine, welcome. You have the floor whenever you're ready to go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. AB 251 will provide clarity in prevailing wage law by defining de minimis public subsidy. Currently, prevailing wage is triggered for public projects of $1,000 or more. In 2001, SB 975 created a de minimis exception where a project does not become subject to the prevailing wage law if it receives a public subsidy that is de minimis in the context of the project. However, SB 975 did not specifically define de minimis. Lack of clarity has led the Department of Industrial Relations to interpret de minimis in various ways. DIR has made determinations of de minimis on projects that have had public subsidies given to developers that range from $65,000 to $4.5 million. In these cases, the public subsidy is a notable amount of taxpayer investment, so it is reasonable to require payment of prevailing wage. To clarify this law, this bill defines a public subsidy as de minimis if it is both less than $25,000 and less than 1% of the total project cost. This would allow a developer, if she or he chooses to seek and or accept a public subsidy, to know if the Prevailing Wage Act will then cover the project. With me to testify in support of the bill is Cesar Diaz with the State Building and Construction Trades Council.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chair. Thank you, members. Great to be back and seeing you all here. As was stated by Assemblymember Levine, we're very thankful that he's carrying this piece of legislation that will clarify when prevailing wage applies to a particular project, a private project that's receiving public subsidies. The legal definition of de minimis is trifling, minimal, insignificant, that a court may overlook it. That was the intent when the drafters of SB 975 inserted that language into the bill. Unfortunately, in recent years, the DIR, Department of Industrial Relations, has strayed and has provided a very loose interpretation of that definition. Basically, they now have coverage determinations for anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of millions of dollars. This bill would finally create a statutory definition of de minimis by providing that a subsidy is de minimis. It is both less than $25,000 and less than 1% of the total project costs. There's a significant need to actually have this definition for the purposes of determining when the prevailing wage is applied to these projects. Without a proper definition or appropriate measure of what should be considered de minimis in the legislative history, projects have moved forward that should have been covered by the Prevailing Wage Act, but were not. This has led to complaints and costly and time-consuming coverage determinations at the Department of Industrial Relations. There's a good list of examples in the committee's analysis, which was a very thorough job done by the committee consultant. Such coverage determinations have created uncertainty over the definition of de minimis over the past decade. The DIR has made determinations of de minimis projects that have led to public subsidies, giving developers a range from $65,000 to $4.5 million, or 0.5% to 1.8% of the project's total cost. It is true that the governor vetoed a similar measure, an identical measure actually, in AB 302. Part of that message had been that there had been no showing of what the current practice is or is unreasonable. We believe that this process creates, there's examples now that create a case for addressing this issue and the need to actually define de minimis. We also are having conversations with the administration and the DIR based on that bill, and will likely increase the amount, but we're yet to have those conversations. We asked for this bill to keep moving forward, so continue having those conversations with the administration and DIR. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next speaker.
I'm out of breath. You go first. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Justin Panzal on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western State Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and California Pipe Trades Council, all in support of the bill. We're going to just really note that the building trades have been working on this for a long time. This is a long time fix that's needed. Thank the Assembly member for running the bill and appreciate your support and moving it forward. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Speaker.
Tim Kremens, Operating Engineers, in full support. We think anything that provides clarity is a benefit both to us, of course, on the labor side, but also management side and awarding agency side. We think it's a great bill. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to add on at this point? Anyone else wishing to add on in support? Okay, here in seeing none, we'll move to the opposition. Those opposed, please come forward. And just as a reminder, 3 speakers, 2 minutes each. Everyone else subsequent would be an add-on.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Mick Camerata on behalf of the California Building Industry Association here basically to say, first of all, we're not opposed in principle to clarifying what de minimis means, but we thought you should have the background as to why it's at 2% in the understanding of the DIR, as you can see reflected in all the examples in the analysis. In our discussions, in our understanding and agreement that we came to in 2001 with the sponsors of this bill, who were also the sponsors of SB 975, the example that was given was a 2% art in public places requirement that many local jurisdictions have. And so it was specific to that, and that's a percentage of the overall project cost, and that's why the language reflects a context of the overall cost of the project. So we think that if you're going to clarify this, you ought to clarify it consistent with that intent. In addition, it provides some flexibility to local governments who may determine that there is a better or more important use of that 2% money. For example, to have that same amount of money contributed to affordable housing in the terms of a trust fund. That's also something that could benefit the sponsors of this bill. It's good for labor and it's good for housing, and that's something that we support. And finally, I would say that it doesn't make sense to us in an escalating construction cost environment to have a set dollar amount. And you can see how in the examples, how over time the amount of the de minimis has grown. So we would urge you to look more towards a percentage, and obviously consistent with SB 975, a 2% number makes sense to us.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dave Ackerman representing the Associated General Contractors. I was at the table along with Mr. Camerota when we did the original negotiations on 975. So I do echo his comments. A 2% goal was what was discussed in the context, and we chose not to write that into the statute to give flexibility to DIR. In fact, in the governor's own veto message on AB 302 last year, I think it's slightly different than what Mr. Diaz mentioned. To quote the governor, he said, "I'm concerned the measure is too restrictive. Finally, there's been no showing that the current practice is unreasonable." And I don't think that this bill, being the same bill returned again, doesn't satisfy that veto message. We discussed with the building trades last year different ways to define de minimis. We feel, when we concur with the governor's statement last year, we think the way the bill's drafted now, it's too restrictive. You need to provide some flexibility to DIR, and the important thing is taking de minimis within the context of the total project. And for those reasons, we remain opposed, but again, willing to always discuss things with the building trades and the author on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Here also in opposition to AB 251. We do echo many of the points that were raised by the building industry and associated general contractors, and would associate ourselves with those points. But I think one issue that wasn't mentioned in the analysis, and is something that has to be also considered, is that when you talk about public subsidies, the ones listed in the analysis fail to mention also the fact that obtaining a tax credit is considered a public subsidy. And that is something that is overlooked, and again goes to that issue of the total context of the project. So we would oppose the bill, willing to work on it with the author on a moving forward basis, but at this point we must remain opposed and ask for no vote.
Understood. Okay, anyone else wishing to add on in opposition? All right, hearing and seeing none, I'll take it to the committee at this time. Members of the committee, any questions, comments? Assemblymember Lowe.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the author. And, about the addressing the concern about the governor's veto message related to the restrictiveness and the relatively reasonable practice. Might you be able to sort of address some of those issues?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and something that we, of course, have wrestled with. And, you know, this is the starting point of having that conversation with the governor's office on how to earn a signature. But when you look at, for example, how de minimis has been defined, even within the same year, you know, there's in one project, a $22 million project, de minimis was defined as over $317,000 in 2008, for example. But in August of 2000, that was May, August of 2008, on a $29 million project, de minimis was $123,000. So, you know, practically a third. And so when we're talking about public subsidies, what does that mean? And I think that this deserves a chance for us to really work through this legislative session to get right. People really want to make sure that their tax dollars are being well spent in the right way.
Okay, Assemblymember Patterson.
Yep. Do I then understand correctly that if in your discussions the governor was to continue to consider this restrictive and unreasonable, would you then come to a 2% in order to gain his signature?
You know, that's a hypothetical, and you know, we'll carry this bill through and try to earn the signature.
Okay, what you're asking us for me to do is to vote on something specific, with the claim that wait and see and things will work through it. I'm trying to figure out kind of where you may eventually go if the governor continues to remain where he is. Would seem to me that if restrictive and unreasonable is his standard, and you're duplicating what he vetoed as restrictive and unreasonable, seems like an effort with an ultimate end.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example that I gave is unreasonable. And I think that we're going to continue to work on this issue. And I don't think any of us always agree 100% of the time with anybody here in the Capitol. And we're going to continue to work through this issue and educate people about it.
Okay, well.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mr. Levine, would you like to close?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members, for helping us work through this issue. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Members, I need a motion and a second to move this bill forward. The bill has been moved by Assemblymember McCarty, seconded by Assemblymember Chu. At this time, I'd just like to say that it is important to continue the dialogue and the discussion on this legislation. I supported it last year. I see the tremendous value of it. We know that public projects that are funded by the public, the taxpayers, range in size and in the dollar amounts, whether it's a $100 million school bond project or a multi-billion-dollar airport renovation project. And so 1% could be in the millions and millions of dollars. And so because of that, it's clear that we have to make sure that we provide the maximum protection of those dollars, the maximum utilization of those dollars under the prevailing wage umbrella so that workers benefit at the greatest level. And these are the protections that we want to make sure that we can look the taxpayers in the face and say, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing at the highest level. So with that, I have an aye recommendation, and we have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. We'll take the vote.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. Hernandez?
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Harper? No. Harper, no. Chu? Aye. Chu, aye. Lowe?
Aye.
Lowe, aye. McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Patterson? No. Patterson, no. Thurman?
Bill is out. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you want to bring up the consent calendar before we take
That's a good idea. Members, since we have a quorum at this time, I'd like to ask us to please take up the consent item, Assembly Bill 145 by Gomez. Is there a motion? Item's been moved by, consent calendar has been moved by Assemblymember Chu, seconded by Vice Chair Harper. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Motion is due pass consent to Appropriations Committee. Hernandez?
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Harper? Aye. Harper, aye. Chu? Aye. Chu, aye. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Patterson? Patterson, aye. Thurman?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That consent calendar is out unanimously. So at this time, I'd like to invite Assemblywoman Gonzalez to please come forward. At this time, we're going to be taking up Assembly Bill 11 and Assembly Bill 67. Assemblywoman, whichever bill is your pleasure to begin with, your pleasure.
I'll start with 11. Thank you so much.
Great.
And good afternoon, Chair and members. It's good to be back in Assembly labor. Today I'm here to present Assembly Bill 11, which allows in-home supportive service caregivers to join the other 6.5 million Californians that qualify for paid sick leave under the Healthy Workplace, Healthy Families Act of 2014. There are more than 360,000 IHSS caregivers in California who are dedicated to providing home care for California's most fragile population, elderly and disabled Californians with low incomes. And despite being among the lowest paid workers in the state, IHSS workers still cannot take an hour of work off to care for themselves or a loved one when they are sick without fear of losing pay or even their job. This can't stand, and this bill offers a simple fix. AB 11 merely revises the definition of employee under the Act to include IHSS caregivers, which would allow them to accrue no less than 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked, like other employees in California will receive this coming July. IHSS workers have endured disproportionate hits during the state's financial crisis, and California cannot continue to write them off. With me today, I have a few people who are going to testify, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. First speaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Jessica Bartolo with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. We're in support of AB 11 to expand the definition of worker under the Paid Sick Days Act to those providing in-home support services to the poorest Californians. Not only is that good for low-income families, 25% of whom have reported throughout a nation survey that they've lost their job due to taking a sick day. It's also good for California's bottom line. Remember, the IHSS program is here to provide savings to the state and support families to stay, individuals who are ill or disabled to stay in their homes. Finally, I'd like to add that it just doesn't make sense to have somebody who's caretaking a sick or disabled Californian to not be able to take sick time off themselves. If they make somebody sick that they're caring for, that undermines the cost savings nature of the program. Additionally, a lot of the home providers help low-income and disabled people get into the community, go to school, and be in other public places. So it undermines the public safety impact of this policy. We are here in proud support of this legislation and urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. Kat DeBerg with the Health Officers Association of California, here in support of AB 11. The health officers are the physicians appointed in each county to oversee public health, and one of their main duties is to stop the spread of communicable disease, and paid sick days are a way to do this. This is especially true for in-home service providers who prepare meals and have intimate contact with individuals who are oftentimes elderly or they have pre-existing medical conditions, which puts them at increased risk for complications from diseases such as the flu, which for you and I is just an inconvenience. For people over 65 or who have pre-existing medical conditions, that can be quite serious and hospitalizing. And as we mentioned, one of the points of this program is to keep people out of hospitals where our cost savings are greatest. So allowing their workers to take time off when they are sick is going to help that. My organization is also in the middle of a study of paid sick leave laws around the nation, and our policy scan, which has been completed, shows that California's law is quite basic. It's quite modest compared to the other laws. So extending these provisions to the in-home service providers is the right thing to do, both for the workers and for their clients. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Micah Doctoroff for the ACLU of California. We see this as an important economic justice issue and see no reason why IHSS workers shouldn't be given the same protections as other workers in California. We are here in support of the bill, and we would urge your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else wishing to add on in support of this fine piece of legislation? Thank you. I don't believe so. You can use the mic there at the table.
Mariko Yoshihara with the California Employment Lawyers Association in support.
Great.
Carol Sewell from the California Commission on Aging in support.
Jasmine Gordon with the California Black Health Network in support.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference in support. And I apologize, we don't have our support letter in, but we are sure in support. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next.
On behalf of 3.8 million members of AARP California, in full support.
Great. Anyone else wishing to add on in support? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'd like to ask those wishing to oppose, please come forward at this time. Hearing and seeing none, I'll take it to the members of the committee. Members of the committee, any questions or comments? Vice Chair Harper.
What are the estimated costs for this legislation in terms of wages and administrative?
That would be determined in appropriations in conjunction with the Department of Finance. Last year there were costs when it was still in the bill that ranged from 15 to 160 million.
Was that just for one of those items or for both in terms of cost of wages and
There was some
administrative
disagreement. It's both administrative and the actual sick days. There was disagreement between the two houses and appropriations and the governor's office on what the actual cost would be.
Okay, but this is provided in the analysis for the previous bill from the previous session?
Yes.
Okay, and it was testified in regards to that there's a potential problem in terms of folks who are involved in IHSS who are avoiding sick time due to wages forgone. Are there any studies or any analysis showing that that's the case, where people are avoiding sick time because of wage or salary?
I think they were talking anecdotally, but I am sure that there has been work done extensively on all aspects of IHSS work that we can get you such study.
Okay. And the last question I had was, my understanding is that this portion of the previous bill from the previous session was removed due to the position of the governor. Has the governor's position in regards to this changed since that time?
No, it hasn't.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Assemblymember Lowe.
Mr. Harper already asked the question.
Okay, very good. Any other members with a question or comment? Assemblymember Chu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to stated that IHH worker not only providing an excellent services to the most vulnerable population, but also save the taxpayer or the health care, a lot of savings on the health care issue. So I'd be happy to move for this AB 11 for a yea vote.
Thank you, Assemblymember Chu. Motion made by Assemblymember Chu. Items off seconded by Assemblymember McCarty. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none. Assemblywoman Gonzalez, would you like to close?
Sometimes we bring bills forward not because they're necessarily going to gain the support of the governor, but because it's absolutely the right thing to do. And last year, at the last moment, when I was forced to take IHSS workers out of our sick day law, as historic and wonderful that was, it was heartbreaking for me personally as somebody who in my former life fought tooth and nail and walked picket lines and got arrested for IHSS workers, quite frankly. So I made that commitment on the floor at that time to bring back this bill as my first bill of the year. I have done that. I make that commitment every day to IHSS workers who ask me why they were taken out of that bill, of which I can provide no good response beyond, the bigger good. We were able to achieve something, and that was important. 6.5 million workers that will be covered as of July 1st with health, with sick days. Nonetheless, sometimes we do things based on value, and that's what this bill is about. I want to continue to push this bill forward, and who knows what can happen by the end of the session, and how the governor's heart can be changed with a lot of prayer and a little needling. Maybe we can get him to change his mind, but in the meantime, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. As you all know, I have a strong support recommendation on this item. The Assemblywoman brought the paid sick days bill before us last year, and as has been pointed out to us, in the very last minutes, in the 11th hour, the governor's office requested that the IHS workers be excluded from the sick days protection that was assured through the passage of this legislation. That was unfortunate. Many members, I would say the majority of the members of the legislature, were unhappy about that request. I recall many of us urging the Assemblywoman not to, but she was thinking about the benefit to the greatest number of people at the time. So I know that this is about keeping a promise to all folks in the community, and I do believe that the IHS workers are performing a very valuable duty. I agree with Assemblymember Chu in that they are providing services to California's most vulnerable, our elderly, our sick, those that have permanent disabilities, and they are already paid at some of the lowest wages doing such very important work. And so I do believe that when they're sick, there is an exponential problem in our communities that arises. So they deserve the same coverage that every other worker has been afforded through the passage of the paid sick days bill of last year. And so with that, I proudly recommend a nice recommendation. Yeah. Madam Secretary, please take the vote.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. Hernandez?
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Harper?
No.
Harper, no. Chu?
Aye.
Chu, aye. Low?
Aye.
Low, aye. McCarty?
Aye.
McCarty, aye. Patterson? No. Patterson, no. Thurman?
The bill is out. Congratulations.
Thank you.